Those of you who have been following along on Signal, you know that I sent this out and I sent out a video. Did any of you have a chance to look at the YouTube video on this information?
I did.
Okay, you didn't have to. I was asked by others to confirm this, and so I did a real quick research and I found some information that confirmed this, of course. And so it was on. It was on there. It was a YouTube video.
Okay, I'm sure I watched it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether you did or not.
I just remember.
But it did solidify that this is legitimate. This is one page of the letter that was sent out. Notice it's sent out from the Nissan Sanhedrin to President Donald J. Trump, and it was sent out on February 12th, so it's not very old. And may Hashem, the Creator, bless you and your nation. We extend our heartfelt gratitude for bringing faith to the forefront of America and global culture through the establishment of the Faith Office in the White House, which is being managed by that super saint, Pastor Paula, what's her name?
Paula White.
Yeah. Your recognition of the importance of religion in public life is a step toward restoring moral values and spiritual leadership in the world. And then they're giving the universal moral code. And now we talked about the Noahide laws as being 7 laws, but they've got it divided here into 3 laws. These are the fundamental principles. One God, to recognize the cause of all causes. This is Genesis 1:1. This will be the one that they'll use when they'll say, do you believe in one God? Whether it's Islam or Judaism or Christianity or any of the religions, including New Age, and they'll say, yeah, one God. Okay? And Peter or John tells us who is the Antichrist. He who denies the Son. What's he denying? That Jesus the Son is God. And that is not an acceptable position under these laws. One first man, to affirm the basic equal rights of humanity, one first man, and one basic law to establish universal principles of justice. And then it goes on. And if you want to know more about the Noahide laws, if you go back a little bit on Signal, you'll see where I posted it, but you can just put Noahide laws on YouTube or anywhere, and it's all very readily available. I believe very strongly, I'm in the 95% belief now. I'm not going to say I'm not a prophet from God prophesying. This is what I believe. For those of you out there, I believe that the Noahide laws will be what is used to put Christians to death. And that big wasp. And are there any discussion about that? About the
Yeah, I'm allergic to bees.
Noahide laws?
No, it's a stink bug.
Oh, it's a stink bug.
Oh.
You know, the whole world can just be destroyed just from one stink bug.
Do you know, those came over in
Take them
containers
outside.
from China.
Don't
With the virus, yeah. Yeah, no, those came from Argentina.
Those Asian ones.
Oh, the Chinese murder bees. Yeah, yeah.
That post that drone bee in the everyone group. I'll have to send it there.
Oh, yeah, I saw it. Yeah, I saw it.
So
Drone bee.
humanism never looked so good, did it?
Yeah.
I got to say, so about Paula White, for everybody who does not know about her,
Oh, we know.
she is a fuzzy parasite. She's a hairy tick.
Yeah, we all know that.
She's a complete hairy tick.
Yeah, we're pretty
I
well.
saw a clip of her and her husband discussing porn and that us women should watch porn with our husbands. He preached that on the church stage. I was going to share it with you guys, but I thought it was over the top, so I didn't.
Well, I'm glad you did now. Let's talk about Paula White. What is the one thing about Paula White that we hang our doctrine on. The Bible hangs its doctrine on.
I do not allow a woman to
No.
preach.
Yeah,
No,
woman to preach.
She has authority
No.
over men.
no. I can show you scriptures that say women will prophesy. That
No,
one
no.
thing,
No, she has authority over men.
that's not what we hang our doctrine on.
Jesus Christ is
She
God.
preaches an incorrect gospel. If anyone, he says it twice, one passage right after there. If anyone preaches a gospel other than the one that Paul had taught them, may it be a curse. And he says it twice. That is where we stand with Paul because it's about Christ. Okay? Everything else you say is true. But that's not what we stand on.
Right.
That's not what we hold on. That's not what I confront people on. What's your gospel? Is it the real gospel? Or is it this fake gospel that's being distributed and has been distributed for the last 60 years? Though everything else you said is probably right. But it's the gospel. Okay? Okay. So, where were we before we got off on Paula White?
We were at the Noahide laws causing Christians.
Oh, yeah,
to be
Noahide
executed.
laws. Okay, so I make only one recommendation to you on the Noahide laws. Avoid having to address them everywhere.
Okay.
Don't address them as Jesus is the only God. Why you say that and hang yourself up? Unless God puts someone in front of you.
If we get arrested and they
Don't put it in print. Don't go on Facebook unless God's yelling at you to do it, saying, "Hey, I'm a Christian and Jesus is God and so is the Father." You can do if God's asking you to do it, do it. But don't do it just for the sake of the flesh.
Well,
Okay?
well, if you deny me before men, I will deny you before the Father.
we're not denying.
If you
You're not
acknowledge
denying,
me, if you acknowledge me before men, I will
Okay,
acknowledge
now-
you before the Father.
Well, remember, let's go back to my precept. If the God is telling you to do it, do it. Don't do anything without God telling you to do it. That's called Him leading you, walking in the Spirit, not in the flesh. If He's taking you that path, you walk it. But don't. So many people will come into arguments on different places when they don't need to. Why should we take you out of the battle before the Lord's done with you? Now, if God's yelling at you, I mean, He tells me all the time, "Mark, post that." Oh, Lord, I told you to post it. Okay, I'm posting it. He's telling you, post it. But if He's not, you get the idea, have a good conversation with Him first.
Where's the metal? The heavy metals.
Heavy metals, yeah. It's a bit brassy.
Any input on that, James? Did that clarify it?
Well, it does, and I think there's a place for everything.
Right.
There's a place for practicing being the underground church. There's a place for Wow, that song was in my head just the other day. Just a line from it.
Don't start singing
A
it. It'll
line
be
from
in
it.
my head.
You don't have to worry about me. I will not start singing anything.
Or post on Facebook.
Yes, I have no Facebook account. I dumped that years ago, years and years and years. I dumped that around 2010.
You mean MySpace?
Which reminds me,
I never had a MySpace.
I don't know if you guys know, but I do have a Facebook account. I only use it to post what my Lord tells me to post.
He's never on there.
I'm
I
And
never
that whole-
on there.
Well, and that whole sermon about watching porn with your husbands, but
I didn't post that one. But if you are interested in posting some of our lessons, that's a good place to forward them off of. Okay. But I'll do what I did today. I'll often send them to you anyway and say, "Hey, if the Lord tells you to post it." But I do put stuff, just lessons, just teaching, on Facebook. I try not to interact in any other way than that. So if you're trying to get a hold of me on Facebook and you recognize that I never return, that's why. Because as soon as I post it, I'm off. I'm done. And the main reason I have it is that, and because I like Marketplace.
Yeah.
Speaking of, are you getting more chickens?
I'd love to. I don't know. Did I tell you guys we lost 3 more chickens?
Yeah, Debbie told me.
And you know, the dog came back last night. We put in, and the dog and our alarms. We put alarms out there, and woke me up at 2:35 this morning. I got my gun. I'm looking out that window, and that dog's straight up right there. And I pulled the trigger, and the gun didn't go off. And so as I'm doing a clearing drill, clear, shell ejected, back down with the bolt, I go up, and the dog now is looking right at me. And I couldn't pull the trigger.
Aww.
I could
It's
do it.
hard, I know. I wouldn't want to be in your spot.
And I heard God say, I took care of it for you, Mark. And as the dog is turned and head out, I fired a shot at its tail. I'm not sure I hit its tail, but its tail was this way. I probably didn't hit the tail, but I scared him off. And I had a good talk with the Lord, and I just couldn't shoot him. He's a beautiful dog.
What kind of dog?
It's a white German Shepherd. Yeah, so, but our alarm system woke us up, and we put a cheap alarm system out there. So, yeah, we do want some more chickens. Layers, though. Ready to go layers.
We need to get some sprinklers on sensor and they just start
Just going off.
Oh.
getting when we walk into your.
Yeah, there's a gal who takes care of, she's got a small orchard, and she's got those to keep the deer away from her fruit trees.
Does it work?
It does.
I've used one.
It
It
does.
managed
It's
to
got a
get me
motion
wet
detector.
many times.
It's got a motion detector. that-
I forget
that
about it,
triggers
but I walked right in front of
It triggers the sprinklers.
I took it down.
Yeah. Oh, they love them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they get all tanked up on apples and go play in traffic.
Okay.
You know, apple-fed deer meat is not
You
bad.
have deer on every single-
Well, let's look at Acts 3.
I'm about to fall out of my chair.
Acts 3. And there's a lot of historical documents here. And I've told you, James, did you have opportunity to look at the evidence on Luke's Hebrew roots?
No, I didn't have to. I'm completely convinced
Really?
that Acts was written in Greek
Okay. Well, in that case,
by Luke,
okay,
who was a Greek.
okay. In
And
that
was
case,
writing
then
to
I
a
want to
Greek.
show you the evidence because I hope you're not telling me you're not willing to have your mind renewed.
I am perfectly willing to have my mind
Okay,
renewed,
then-
but I'm also perfectly convinced of my position on this.
Have you
because
looked
of
at the evidence?
because of the internal evidence.
Have
of
you
the
looked at
document
the
itself.
evidence?
But I haven't.
Okay,
no,
well,
I
let's
haven't
look
been
at the
online
evidence.
sufficient to
Let's look at the
anything
evidence.
else.
Let's look at the evidence. Okay, so, I mean, we would be a fool to be presented evidence by a brother who is convinced to not look at the evidence, don't you think? Okay, so we're going to just look at the evidence.
Collectively, we would be a fool.
Yeah, collectively we'd be a fool. So we're going to look at the evidence. So,
Hebrews is written by Paul and not Luke.
no, it's written by Luke. But Luke is a Hebrew and not a Gentile. And there's evidence, and I'm going to show you the evidence. And I can't show it all to you, but it should be enough for you to say, you know, it might be true, and hopefully you'll follow it up because the evidence is considerable and time consuming. But I'm going to show you the basics.
I'm also willing to go to the mat over James being the first book that was written in the New Testament and Galatians being second.
Okay, I'll agree. I'm easy. And the only reason this makes difference is because whether Luke was a Hebrew or Greek affects our hermeneutics. For instance, James says he's a Greek. I was taught he was a Greek. Everybody says he's a Greek today. But did you know that the fathers did not say he was a Greek?
You mean that Luke was?
Yeah, and we're going to look at him. So let's see. So let's see if I can. I may have to go to. Okay, here they are, right here. We can use these. Okay, so when it comes to interpreting whether Luke was a Greek or not, or whether he was a Hebrew, I'm going to go through some quick evidence. And all this evidence is available on YouTube and on this website. And the website, I think I've showed you guys the website before. Let's see if I can show it to you.
Hebrew Gospels.
Yeah, the Hebrew Gospels. So, oh, this is a video. So why does nothing seem to work? Huh. Oh, I know why it doesn't work, because this is a photo. Okay, so I'm going to show you. Here it is. This is called the Hebrew Gospels. Discover the Hebrew Gospels from Shepharad. Now, the Hebrew Gospels from Shepharad are not original documents. Almost everybody that looks at them will say they are not original documents. They have parts in them that demonstrate that they are in Hebrew, that they were translated from a Greek or Aramaic. And you know how we've talked about wordplay, we talked about figures of speech, we've talked about how we would say something depending upon culture. With a Shepharad, Hebrew Gospels definitely reveal that they were translated back into Hebrew from Greek. But what I'm going to show you is a document that does not have those same components. And what we're going to look at, and if you go to the Discover the Hebrew Gospels, these are the Shepharad. Here's the Matthew Gospel. And then, James, you got a book on Revelation, James, Jude. They all, did you read the proofs? And
I've looked at some of it. I haven't had time to look
okay,
at it.
so they have the proofs. And the proofs, if you're not an English major, it doesn't matter. The proofs are very clear and precise. I never even graduated from high school, and I could interpret them at what he's saying. So the information is there. Now, right here, he's got videos, and you can click on this website, and you can see the Hebrew manuscripts, playlist, videos, the Hebrew Gospel of Luke. And let's see if we go there. Okay. So here's the videos on the Hebrew Gospel of Luke. And there's 2 videos, and it's a 3-video series. A third one is still coming. So you can go here and you can get the first one. This is the translation update for the Hebrew Gospel of Luke. And you can click that on and you can watch it. Then there is a second one, and this directly answers the question. This is the one we're going to look a little bit at. Was Luke a Gentile, a proselyte, or a Jew? What is the evidence? Okay, and so that gives the evidence. So we're going to look at this a little bit, but we're going to do it a little different way because I saved some videos. I don't want to just watch the whole video. I want to leave that for you. And for each of us, if this is a consideration for you, then God will prompt you to do it. But from henceforth, I am going to teach Revelation, James, Jude, and Luke. And I'm working on Matthew right now because there's another document which seems to prove that Matthew is Hebrew also. It has been found. So I'm going to teach them as being from a Hebrew author because that's what God has shown me. So that will affect how we look. So when we're reading Acts, and we've always thought, well, Luke is a Greek, right? And he's writing. He's the only Greek that's writing. And so we look at it from a different perspective. You know, he's not a Hebrew. He doesn't have a Hebrew mentality. Yet the evidence is there that he truly does. So if you also go on here and it says Other Hebrew New Testament, you can order the hard copy book I gave to James, free mobile app, if you want the mobile app, an introduction to Other Hebrew New Testament, which is Revelation, James, and Jude. All the apologetics are there. This guy's really, really a good teacher. So we're going to go look at Luke. Now Luke come from a. Can you guys read that up there?
No.
Okay, you can't. Let's see if.
But that's all right. I believe what you're saying.
Okay, so it says right there, Luke is a first draft translation. That's what this is, based on the Vatican EBR 100, has been completed. We have also compiled a draft Hebrew transcript of Luke based on multiple manuscripts. Links below to view the manuscripts. One of the reasons why I'm convinced is because everything's there. Everything on this website, the manuscripts are there. The only thing I cannot confirm is whether his translation is accurate. But we have that same problem with every other translation, don't we? But as I study these books in Hebrew, a lot of the apologetic questions, there are those people that say, well, the Bible's not true because it says this here, and it can't be both. In the original Hebrew manuscripts, those contradictions are taken care of. So the entire English translation is currently being rechecked against the new Hebrew transcript. See Hebrew translation on the Hebrew Gospel of Luke for more information. And please subscribe to receive important updates. So you can click that and you can get more updates. So here's the translation update video, and here is the manuscripts. So the manuscript that we're interested in is this one, for this is the one that these translators have gone through, and you can go straight to the transcript. Here's the transcripts out of the Vatican, and there's what they translated out. They're pictures, and you can go straight to it. You can get every page, and if you read Hebrew, you too can translate it. Okay, so that's the transcripts that he's using. Okay, so what I want to do is we're going to look at some photos with some of the questions, not all of them. We don't have time to go through the whole thing. Please, if you are at all unconcerned or if this interests you, spend the time to do the research. You just watch his video. You sit down, and he's very good. First, was Luke Paul's kinsman? Romans 16:21 says Lucius, that's the Greek word, and Jason and Sosipater, my kinsmen. So, Paul says in Romans 16:21 in the LSB translation in there that he is their kinsman. Luke, an affection or pet name for Lucius, so he's making the argument that in that document, Lucius and Luke are the same person, just like Paul and Saul. The idea known since Origen that Luke is to be identified with the Lucius of Romans 16:21. This is said by, and here is the one who said it, BDAG, a Greek-English lexicon of the New Testament and other early Christian literature, 3rd edition. So he isn't just making this stuff up, he's looking. Okay, there is the first one, is that in Romans 16:21, can you read it to you?
It was exactly what you read up there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You have it?
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead and read it. My finger's on it.
Okay, Timothy, my fellow worker, greets you. So do Lucius and Jason and Sosipater, my kinsmen.
Okay, so here we are. This Lucius character is Paul's kin. He's related to Paul. These are Paul's kinmen. Now, the question is, people will say, and they have said, those that believe that Luke is not a Hebrew, is, well, Lucius and Luke are not the same person. Yet, this person who wrote a Greek English lexicon of the New Testament, other early Christian literature, third edition, says that Origen said that Luke and Lucius were the same one. That's evidence one.
I would submit that another evidence from that same verse in Romans is that he refers to Timothy as being a fellow worker, who he refers to elsewhere as being my son in the faith. And he makes a distinction that Timothy is a fellow worker, whereas Lucius and Jason and Sosipater are kinsmen. So I would.
That's not an exclusionary argument.
It's not, but it is. It does lean toward dragging Luke into the fold.
Though I can say you're my brother, which you are,
Right.
and you're also my neighbor, which you are,
Yeah.
and in two different contexts, they would both be correct.
Yes.
So that argument that is made is very weak.
Except
Yes.
the word for brother and kinsman would be different.
Okay.
Also, the point that I'm making is that he does not refer to Timothy as his son in this verse.
Yeah.
He
And
he does refer to him as his son in the faith.
Yeah.
Elsewhere. So all I'm saying is that the word kinsman has a greater piece of weight to it because Timothy is not referred to with a word that ties him in a family way to Paul.
and James, I would ask that we not put the opposing arguments in this component. We don't have enough.
I'm actually arguing in favor of what you're saying.
Oh, please don't do that to me.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm giving you an argument that agrees with what you say.
Okay. So here it says belonging to the same extended family or clan, related kin. That's the Greek word. Belonging to the same people group, compatriot. BDAG's lexicon. What James just said, I think. Okay. So, I want to go fast through this. And I apologize. I just don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to show you the evidence is pretty overwhelming. And I'm not going to show you a lot of it. I'm just showing you a little. Several church fathers indicate that Luke was Jewish. The fact remains that three fathers, Origen, Ephraim, and Epiphanius, specify Luke's Jewishness. This is recorded in James R. Edwards, The Gospel According to Luke, Pillar New Testament Commentary, Erdman's 2015, section 3.2. Okay. Next argument. The voice of tradition, Jerome. Jerome Lives of Illustrious Men, Book 3, Lives of Illustrious Men, Book 3, Chapter 7. Luke, a physician of Antioch, he writes, was not unskilled in the Greek language. Now, if he was a Greek, of course he's not unskilled in the Greek language. But he's a Hebrew, and so he makes mention that he was not unskilled in the Greek language. And he states, an adherent of the Apostle Paul and companion of all his journeying, he wrote a gospel. This is Phyllis Schaff, the Nicene, Post-Nicene Fathers, second series, volume 3, page 363. Minor component. But why would I say, hey, you guys know Tia? You know Gene? They're skilled in English. That would be a dumb thing to say if you were English. And that's what the point is making here. Jerome is saying he's not a Greek, but he's skilled in Greek. Okay, next.
It's a double negative, so it's got to be positive.
Yeah,
so he was skilled. Yeah.
Hey, good job, Pete. I can't seem to make this thing go forward. Why is it? Oh, there you go.
Because it's
The voice of tradition, Origen. Origen, Commentary on Romans, Book 10, Chapter 39. Lucius and Jason and Sosipater, my relatives greet you. Some maintain that this very Lucius is Luke, who wrote the gospel, since it is customary for names to be given sometimes in accordance with the native declensions, sometimes even according to the Greek or Roman declension. So here we have Thomas P. Schenck writing the book in Origen, Commentary on the Epistle to the Romans, Book 6, 10, the Catholic University of American Press, page 304. Origen. He said that. Luke versus Lucius, a biform of Lucius, from Lucius, a Latin name Lucius. Luke, Lucius, it's just like, you know what my name is in French? Marcus.
In German, it's Marcus.
Yeah. Marcus. We all have a different name. Pete, what's German Pete?
Pete?
Peter. There you go. See, so it's the same idea. And so that is the point they're trying to make, is it can be the same name. The voice of tradition.
Hebrew for James is Yaakov.
Yaakov. Yeah, Yaakov. That's right. And we'll see that as we continue to study the Hebrew documents. We'll see, because when he translates names, he uses the names. I really like that. Yahweh. What does our Bibles translate Yahweh to? Every time.
God?
No.
Lord?
Lord. Yeah. But he says Yahweh. If the transcript said Yahweh, it's Yahweh.
Yeah, they put all cap lock.
Yeah, because Yahweh is all caps. Yeah. That's why they say Lord. So, Origen, commentary on Romans. It is certain that he is identifying another kind of relationship that is held in common with himself, Timothy and Luke, and with a few others like them. Footnote, Origen has evidently accepted the view that identifies Lucius with Luke. Just another example of that connection. Hardly any church father said that Luke was a Gentile. Hardly.
That means there must have been one, huh?
There's one, and we will see that. The fathers appear to have been of two opinions. Luke was either a Jew or a proselyte. Now, what's the difference? What's a proselyte? James?
That's a Gentile who converts to Judaism.
That's right. That's anyone who is normally a Jew who has converted to Judaism.
Actually, that would be a Jewish proselyte. So if a pagan converts to Catholicism, you would be a Catholic proselyte.
Very good. Thank you. That's more clarification of the word proselyte. Okay. So, whose famous work, The Credibility of the Gospel History, proved a mine of information to generations of scholars about the views of the fathers, said none of the writers out of whom we have made collections call him a Gentile. None. If Luke was a Gentile, why did none of the early church fathers specify that he was a Gentile? Why did none of the early commentaries, introductions, identify Luke as a Gentile? None of them do. Why would the greatest exception of authorship in the New Testament go unnoticed? If you think back in the Old Testament, every time the Bible talks about someone in the Bible that was not a Jew, that's made clear. Jesus' line comes from Rahab, the prostitute, who was not a Jew. Every place. Why didn't any of the early Testament writers say, hey, by the way, this guy that's writing is a Gentile? That's a good argument which deserves research. Which early traditions say Luke was a Gentile? Irenaeus? No. Clement? No. Tertullian? Well, every one of those. Joshua, Paul Smith, Luke was not a Christian reading the third Gospels and Acts within Judaism. Not one of those fathers say Luke was a Gentile. But
That says Luke was not a Christian.
that was his book. That was his book.
Okay.
So you'd go to page 7273 and page 233 of that book. That's the name of the book. Luke was not a Christian. This is his book. There was, which early traditions say Luke was a proselyte? One, Jerome, the only one. And then if you want to study Jerome, Jerome is a unique fellow. We get a lot of our doctrine from Jerome. He had some bad doctrine too, but he's the only one. None of them said he was a proselyte, except for Jerome. Jerome did say. So we have one church, early church father that said he was a Jewish proselyte. To sum up, Colossians 4:10-14 does not prove that either Timothy or Luke was an uncircumcised Gentile. Many use that argument. Romans 16 shows that Luke, Lucius, was Paul's family member or fellow Israelite. No single early church father or other early source explicitly called Luke a Gentile. So now this isn't all the all of it. There's the Hebrew language if you want to know how to read it. But it's all we're going to show tonight. And if you still want to know more, I would recommend you watching his video. You can watch it on YouTube on Luke. The guy's good. And if you see anything that's wrong after you ask the Lord, let's talk about it. But I'm going to, from now on, I'm going to use the Gospel of Luke in the Hebrew version.
And you can email them too, questions, because.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And they got back, well, I asked them if I could do printouts, and
Yeah.
they said yes.
Oh yeah, they don't ask for money. They don't. These guys are right on it. They work hard for nothing other than to get the truth out. Yeah. So that's
Colossians 4:10 through 14 doesn't even touch on that.
in
That's
his.
very strange.
What you want to read it?
Oh, I'll go find it.
We just Colossians on.
1,000.
It's right after the page that has Philippians.
You want me to show you how to find Colossians 10 right here? Watch this. Here's how you find Colossians.
My fellow prisoner Aristarchus sends you his greetings, as does Mark, the cousin of Barnabas. You've received instructions about him. If he comes to you, welcome him. Jesus, who is called Justus, also sends greetings. These are the only Jews among my fellow workers for the kingdom of God, and they've proved a comfort to me. Epaphras, who is one of you and a servant of Christ Jesus, sends greetings. He is always wrestling in prayer for you, that you may stand firm in all the will of God, mature and fully assured. I vouch for him that he is working hard for you and for those at Laodicea and Hierapolis. Our dear friend Luke, the doctor, and Demas send greetings. Ah, there it is.
Okay, so you see what people's argument is that Paul didn't include those.
No,
So-
what he's saying is that these are the only Jews among my fellow workers.
Yeah.
And then later he refers to his dear friend Luke
Yeah.
as being with him,
Yeah.
after having said there are no Jews with him other than these two.
Yeah, but Demas is a Jew. We are found that in a Jew. So as he explains, he says the way this is going, if you know Paul, if you read his letters, he'll often say, hey, I tell you, so-and-so greets you, so-and-so greets you. Then he'll start talking about somebody else and they go, oh yeah, and so-and-so. And he'll say, I don't think I baptized anybody. Well, maybe so-and-so, but nobody else. Oh, and so-and-so. So he's like writing his letter, but different things are filling his mind and filling it. That's the way that the argument is made with this piece. And Demas is a Jew. So the point is that he added Demas and Luke after going on. He goes, oh, wait a minute, Demas and Luke are here too. So, but this has been the major argument right here, James, of why Luke is thought to be a Gentile. This is the main passage right here. But when you don't have any of the early church fathers saying Luke was a Gentile, that's a problem. And why should it surprise us? Satan has done an amazing job deceiving the church in the last 100 years, and probably before that. Jesus said in the end days, deception will be everywhere. And what else did he say? Knowledge will increase. And we have to think, oh, knowledge because the computer stuff. No. God's knowledge is increased. God is showing us truth that hasn't been available to us so that we can reconcile all things. When he takes into his kingdom, his children will have been able to, and probably will have been able to reconcile everything they needed according to their calling. My calling has been to be a guide. My calling has been to show people the scriptures that they can use. So he showed me through Tia. But the arguments are good. James.
So I would, to ride on your horse for a minute, I would say that it makes sense that Luke would be quite probably a non-Judean residing Jew. So somebody
Antioch.
from Antioch, because he's the physician from Antioch. And so he would be a Hellenized Jew who then later comes to Christ. But also that makes sense if he's raised as a Jewish person, because since he wrote Hebrews, it makes sense that he didn't just get all of his information that he carries into that book from Paul.
Yeah, and I understand your argument that he may have read Hebrews, but it's not. Hebrews is. I'm studying Hebrews. I've been studying it for a month now. Hebrews is not written by Luke. No, I mean, if he did, he totally changed his writing style. I mean, I study. I mean, I study 4 to 10 hours a day, and I'm looking at Acts of Luke, and I'm looking at Hebrews. That is, in my opinion, those are not the same person. But it's as good an argument as anyone else because we're not told. But there is one person that makes the most sense to me as I've been praying on this subject matter. Who has been with Paul all this time? Paul even said, or Luke even said, that Peter and them in Acts, well, we haven't got there yet. We're going to see it. They were swept away by the prophets that came from Jerusalem, that everybody sinned, even Barnabas. See, now who is Barnabas? Barnabas goes back further than all the way, goes all the way back to the beginning. Barnabas is a Jew of Jews. We don't have any of his writing. He was with Paul his full ministry. A very large portion of his ministry. He did separate for a while. But he knows Paul. He knows the Hebrew. He's held in high regards. To me, he is the most logical case. But whoever we have, I don't care who you say it is, if we got their writing, none of those writings are the same as Hebrews. Hebrews is a totally different writing style, different mentality. Sentence structures and arguments are presented totally different. So if it's Luke or Paul, and Paul, in my opinion, is closer, Paul the writer of Hebrews understood things like Paul. Luke, when I read him, he doesn't write like Hebrews. He's got the knowledge, and he could be. Someday we're going to all slap each other on the back and say, your guess was the best.
This might be a dumb question, but could it be writing a different time in his life? Like it was written in a different time?
It could be, but
Like
even...
I would think of just, for example, like something I wrote when I was 20,
Mhm.
and then later when I matured, my writing style slowed.
Yeah, but I bet you that if you took your writings when you were 20, you took your writings today, you'd see a lot of comparisons that are the same.
Yeah.
And there's one person that we have that we can look at his writings to make that determination, just as you said. His name is John. John wrote at a very young age, and he wrote at a very old age. We can see the differences in his writing styles, but they're not that different in style. They're different in intent. As John wrote, he wrote as a loving Jesus with certain things, but when he wrote Revelation, he wrote different material. But his writing styles, when you break his writing styles down to how he writes, his sentence structure, they're a lot the same. And so would yours be. Yours might be more refined, but they'd still be the same you in that writing style. And we can see that in Paul's letters. It's the same writing style through every one of his letters. You know, Paul does the same thing, sets them up. I mean, he's a little bit different because sometimes we don't have time to do it all this way we'd want to do it. We just fire off a letter. That's kind of what John did in John 1, 2, and 3. But his writing style is the same. Very unique. Now, most people would probably not be able to interpret those writing styles. Because if you didn't spend a lot of time looking at his writing styles and what he's saying and how he's saying it, you wouldn't be able to interpret that. I remember 10 years ago, I could not interpret. I remember people saying, well, who? And so I did what James said. I started looking for people that had the same writing style. And I kept asking the Lord, I said, where's this writing style that's supposed to be lined up with Hebrew? And the closest I could come up with it was, Paul. He writes like Paul. but he could be anybody.
The letter to the Hebrews is also laid out like Paul's logic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it follows the same path
Mm-hmm.
that Paul's logic follows. The reason why I'm convinced Paul didn't write it is because Paul always appeals to his own authority. God gave me the office of apostle, and
Yeah.
I'm writing to you from that God-given
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
And nowhere in that book does that show up.
No.
Um,
Matter of fact, his authority is always God.
yeah,
In Hebrews.
God
Always God. The Father, not necessarily Jesus either. There's a good separation there.
but in favor of it being Luke and saying that his writing style is different from Luke and Acts. In Luke and Acts, he's writing as a historian, and in Hebrews, he's writing as a pastor. And so there's a completely different authorial intent.
Yeah.
But within the Greek, and I have no examples to give you, but within the Greek, there are certain turns of phrase that are unique to Luke. And that's where the crux of
you
the
see
argument
some of
comes up.
those in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so those things come up. And it's actually an academic argument, especially if it draws us off of what's in the body of the work.
Yeah, and we will look more solidly in Hebrew. I have been hesitant to teach out of Hebrew because it's very deep, and most people can't grasp the foundation that's required to understand it. But you today do. We can talk about things today that we couldn't talk about 5 years ago. And so we are about ready for Hebrew. And so after Acts, Lord willing, we'll hammer some Hebrew out. I am teaching out of it with some mentors. I am mentoring out of the book of Hebrew. Hebrew is a great book to mentor out of. Like Romans, it consists of the gospel from the beginning to the end, but from a slightly different viewpoint.
It's almost Jewish.
It's really close.
I could go along with Luke being Jew.
Okay, well, so please forgive me if you disagree, but I am so convinced I can no longer follow the common misunderstanding that Luke was a Greek and that the New Testament wasn't written in Hebrew. I'm not saying all the books were, but I'm very convinced Jude, James, a great book, Jude, James, Revelation, and Luke have been. And I suspect the Lord is going to give us more. And these people on this website, if that information's out there for the Lord, that the Lord wants us to understand, they'll find it and they'll translate it.
That's odd that Luke would be written in Hebrew originally because it was written to a Greek. I mean, it's strange that he would write that initially in Hebrew. That's the thing that hangs it up for me.
Hebrew should be written in Hebrew.
No, Luke.
Oh, Luke, yeah.
That Luke would have been written in Greek because it was written to a Greek.
Well, and that is the other side of the argument. And that's where you really need to look at the information, because the argument is made and it's assumed as being true that the early church spoke as their parent language Greek. That's not true. They spoke their parent language as Hebrew. Now, there's nobody today that was there that could tell you. And again, just like people saying Luke was written in Greek, there's evidence that is presented. But in the arguments by these authors who are doing these translations, and these are Hebrews, these are Messianic Hebrews, and it's a family and friends that have been doing these translations, their life work. Their evidence that the early church was Hebraic and spoke Hebrew as their primary language is very clear. And the biggest argument for that is, again, what God said to Daniel in Daniel 12. Go away, Daniel. That'll be revealed in the end of days, and knowledge will increase. And the documents found in the Dead Sea's scrolls prove that they spoke and wrote in Hebrew. Common documents. Like, hey, Tia owes us $37.18, written in Hebrew. Now, these were Essenes, but the Essenes were a popular sect in Judaism. We don't hear about them in the Bible much, but they were just as plentiful as the other two sects, which were the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And all their documents are found written in Hebrew. So, not all of them. Let me correct that. Many of their documents are found written. Their day-to-day documents, their ledger, their notes, their commentaries written in Hebrew. So the claim that has been broadcast through our schools and passed down by men that they only spoke Greek except for those in the synagogues and those scribes and Pharisees are the only ones who spoke Hebrew, doesn't carry any weight. The evidence, the latest evidence of the Dead Sea Scrolls speaks otherwise. So.
I think the argument could be better made that Greek was the commercial language of the day.
It was, yeah.
That because everybody had their local languages, and the Greek was the one that was universal, like English is today.
Yeah.
Every pilot, every airline pilot speaks English because that's the language they speak in the control tower, and so that language has to translate all the way across. But to say that everybody in the early church spoke Greek is a stretch, because all of the early Christians were Jews.
Now, Greek did come in and Hebrew was lost. There's no denying that. Hebrew was lost.
70 AD would have
70
been a big
AD dispersed. But if you go to Dakota right now, you'll find Spanish spoken. You'll find Chinese spoken. Got neighbors, two neighbors, whenever they get together, they just talk in their neighbor tongue, Japanese. But of course, they have to do business with us. Arabic, which is the Aramaic, which is the Arab language, was spoken. So was Greek, because they were the rulers. But the Hebrews still had the Hebrew language. They weren't giving it up. And their life consisted of the synagogue. It consisted of it. It consisted of the temple. And when the temple was gone, it consisted of the synagogue. They aren't giving up their language because all of a sudden they had to. It was like, as time went on and they filtered into society, the Hebrew language was less and less used. Until the later days. So we're going to start with Acts 3:1. And